Hey again, everyone. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. It is the College Football Show. We come your way every Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. But that one time a week, what do? We go late night based on your feedback, based on your requests. So we go late night once a week, and we move it around so everybody can eventually get to the call-in line. Last weekend was Friday night, and thank you, Tukey G, for leading us off with a Friday night call. And this week it's on a Wednesday. Here we are. And yes, anything special about USC in the football news tonight? No. Just got done with the USC live show with Matt Zemek and Ethan Inman. So we're just transitioning from USC to the rest of college football. So again, comments and questions are welcome. And the call-in line and the link is in the comments section. Nico Iamaleava, of course, made huge news here in the last several days, missed practice before the spring game, and that's when we all found out there were big rumblings of trouble in Knoxville, and now we've seen it all come apart at the University of Tennessee. But Nico has found a home at UCLA, and we got Matt Zemek here. You can catch Matt's work at Trojans Wire, and of course, one of our leading contributors here at the Voice of College Football on the USC channel in particular. Matt, how you doing tonight?
Doing well. And so folks watching here at the Voice of College Football, just finished the USC show. Hey, might as well stay on with Mark to talk a little Nico for a little bit. Why not?
Yeah, so I certainly, I had Peter Burns from the SEC Network on yesterday. I pontificated for hours and hours myself, so that's all out there. So let's lead it off by getting your take on what this tells us about college football going forward, and also just this specific decision by Nico's, I guess we'll have to put it in quotes, brain trust, and then, of course, him moving on from the University of Tennessee.
Man, so many layers of the onion to peel away with this one. Let's start with the point that, this is not a happy story. Like, this is a young man obviously receiving some pretty bad advice from his management team, from his inner circle, from people who are supposed to be guiding him, giving him the right information, the right perspective. That's not good. That's not a happy story. But there is something, I think, that's reassuring in a certain sense, and that is that, we thought, these schools and the NIL era, they're just going to throw money at anything that moves or breathes. They're just going to just fling money out the door like drunken sailors. Well, not exactly. So there actually is some restraint. There actually are some there's a willingness to pump the brakes, to not just dive at anything. There are actually some standards. So maybe for people who think that this is just uncontrolled spending, it's just an always upward nuclear arms race. No, there are actually some restraints. There are actually some brakes involved. So that's one thing. I think the two other things I want to hit on. One is I've seen some commentators, not just fans, but commentators say, well, this is just like Matthew Sluka at UNLV. No, this is not just like Matthew Sluka. Obviously, there are lots of points of commonality, but the Matthew Sluka story, the moral of that story is, if you have representation and you claim to have a deal, you need to get that deal in writing. That's the Matthew Sluka story. This is a quarterback, Iamaleava, trying to leverage his position in the offseason, believing that he deserved a pay raise. The Sluka story at UNLV was he had a verbal promise from an assistant coach to get a certain amount of money, but not in writing. What he had in writing from UNLV was much less than what he was verbally promised. So that's the angle there. We shouldn't lump the two together. There's some overlap, but there are a lot of things about that are different. The other final point to make is that, for people who don't know this, there was a prospect, Madden Iamaleava, and he was supposed to be going to UCLA. He flips to Arkansas. So like UCLA and Deshaun Foster have already been burned by the Iamaleava family. So it's really interesting for Nico Iamaleava to now apparently turn to UCLA in his hour of need. So really fascinating plot twist. For people who followed Madden Iamaleava, might have thought, well, hey, UCLA is done with that family. Guess not. So lots of interesting pieces to talk about here.
My viewpoint, Matt, and again, I have gone on and on from the standpoint of what this tells us about college football in the present, what maybe the University of Tennessee decision has steered for the future, as you have just alluded to. I'm going to take on the UCLA angle. The winners in this, if Nico is as much of a good kid, good student of the game, applies himself, does all the things as I understand he is. I think this is a parent issue for the most part, and allowing this so-called agent to interfere and get in there as well and become part of the circle of influence. But if everything I hear about him personally is somewhat accurate, I think UCLA wins out in this, as long as they did not, break the bank and, rob a number of other position needs in this. But, they have upgraded at the position. And for as much as he financially was overpaid, and because of that was overrated in a sense for his first season in Tennessee, and then, again, overcompensated in the marketplace, now that apparently has been brought back to a more reasonable number, and he's at UCLA. From a UCLA perspective, they've made out here because they have upgraded at the position.
I mean, it really goes to what you said. If he's as good as some people think he is, and if he's as good as some people hope he is, then yes, I mean UCLA really makes out. I think there are a lot of people within UCLA who think, oh man, we're signing up for a soap opera. We're signing up probably for a 1-year rental that he's probably going to be out the door looking for a bigger school, bigger location, and bigger money next season. I haven't seen, because I was doing the USC show the past hour. I haven't seen if an NIL number has come in reported on Nico Iamaleava at UCLA. If we assume that it's around 2 million, so like it was a slight pay cut from the 2.4 that he was making, or at least was set to make at Tennessee, then UCLA is not overpaying for it. But nevertheless, UCLA might be signing up for a lot of headaches with the family. And one thing that a lot of people, fans and commentators alike, have been saying today, and it's something I agree with too. Like, what does Nico Iamaleava himself think? His dad's been speaking for him. His agents are speaking for him. What does he think? And so, how much is he driving this bus, or how much is he allowing others around him to do this? And that's where we get into a really concerning element of all this, is that the son wants to please his father but needs to be his own man. And how much of a boundary, how much of a firewall is there between son and father? That's like the thing that at a just a very human level concerns me, and is something that I hope Nico Iamaleava is learning to establish boundaries on. That he needs to be his own man. He needs to make his decisions. He can't just let other people dictate his life for him. I hope that this decision was made with some degree of personal independence and autonomy, whatever the decision was.
Yeah, I had to kind of edit myself in the moment, because I jumped on here immediately when that story broke on Saturday morning, I believe it was. And I jumped on, and I just immediately was pointing my finger, shaking my finger at Nico, and caught myself a couple minutes in and thought, okay, let's understand that what the decision process is here, and the influence of the father. Would I have done something maybe likewise when I was 20 years old, with my dad influencing me? And the dad, I know nothing else about him except for what it involves in this situation, but it appears to be greedy, unethical, simply unaware, and just detached from reality in regards to his son's standing in the marketplace, and his son's not necessarily ability or talent or potential, but his current playing level, and thinking that, yeah, he's going to go to Oregon. He's going to go basically his landing spot of his choosing, and it just didn't turn out that way. When he basically, Matt, had, I don't know that you can draw up a better situation for a quarterback. He's already got 2 years in the system. Josh Heupel's one of the best offensive minds in the game. It's a burgeoning program that has tremendous fan support. I don't know if UCLA is going to put in as many fans in that stadium in 3 games that they'll get in Knoxville. And, just everything was working for him, and he was making more money. Apparently, we believe that we see some reports that he had to take a cut in pay because his father thought too much of him.
Yeah, and he played in the college football playoff against Ohio State on national television. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on about all the good things that Nico had going for him at Tennessee. So it really is a head scratcher. And I'm seeing a lot of people in the chat saying that the reported figure is $1.75 million. So he's taking a pay cut of nearly $700,000, and he's leaving. Yes, that's the other part. Josh Heupel, proven quarterback coach. Like, look what he did for Hendon Hooker and his football career. And so he goes to UCLA, where, hey, like Deshaun Foster did not do a bad job in year 1. He actually did better than I thought I was going to see from UCLA. So Deshaun Foster might be a really good coach, but we know UCLA does not have the huge war chest, that UCLA is not in a position to get the biggest fish in the portal. Now, one could say that this is kind of a big fish, but you need big fish on the offensive line. You need big fish at wide receiver, and UCLA doesn't have those things, and it's not in the best position to compete for those ingredients. So, yeah, it's just a big puzzler on so many levels.
Matt, we appreciate you being here, and everybody catch Matt's work at Trojans Wire on a daily basis. And again, the USC show with Matt and myself is back on Wednesday night, 10 Eastern, 7 Pacific. Thanks, Matt, for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. We will keep it rolling here at the Voice of College Football. If I mute myself from time to time, as this is my 5th show today, there's a little cough that comes up from time to time. So just excuse me if it takes me a second to get to your answer. All right, let's keep it rolling. We got Dan on the line. Dan, what's going on?
Good evening, Mark. How are you tonight, sir?
Good evening. I'm doing well. How are you?
Unfortunately, I've received bad news on my end. My boss just passed away last night.
Oh, my goodness.
Yep, my farm boss, my buddy's great-grandpa just passed away last night. With my buddy's family, I got a phone call from them saying passed away in my buddy's great-grandpa's arms, the age of 95, last night.
Well, our thoughts and prayers go out to their family. Sounds like he lived a long and prosperous life. Well,
I'll tell you, he was
in terms of anything involving college football that you've got on your mind tonight.
I think that's with one thing, it was UCLA with Nico's move to UCLA. I think on that point, it's also his dad influenced him to go to UCLA. But also the move to UCLA, in my opinion, is kind of a bit of a stupid move, since I pointed this out last week or sometime when I came on. Nico was a star at Tennessee, took him to the playoffs. He has the great coach in Josh Heupel. Makes the move to UCLA. In my opinion, kind of a dumb move in my opinion. So, I mean, really, what does that say about his parents influenced him to go to one school and moving from Tennessee? I think moving from Tennessee is going to be a bad decision on his part. But I mean, if he wants the extra money, I mean, UCLA is a Jordan Brand school, so that's one other thing that's making them, that decision also, that could be a factor. So, I mean, I get Nico's situation. I mean, sometimes it happens, even to the best of us, and even people that have played the game. You know, nowadays it's like you could go in the transfer portal, go to one school, then go to another. So I mean, that's where I'm kind of pointing it out.
Okay, when you say it happens, it didn't happen. He made a decision. Nothing was
Well, I'm
going to
saying
happen
I'm
otherwise.
not just saying.
Nothing was going to happen otherwise if he didn't make a decision. He'd be the quarterback at Tennessee today. So it
Well,
didn't happen.
I'm just saying, even with his dad's influence, it happened because it was
Well, obviously it happened. My statement is basically it happened because we're not talking about, you know, somebody had a train fall on their head or something, like something tragic happened here that he couldn't control. No, he caused this situation. He and his brain trust, they created this situation. They created
No, I
a bad
understand
situation for Tennessee, and they ultimately created a bad situation for themselves because they apparently have $700,000 less than they would have otherwise, and play for a worse football team.
No, but I understand that too, Mark. But I'm just saying, coming from me, like if I was in this situation, in my opinion, I would just not even play college football at that point because it drives somebody. It's going to drive somebody nuts, even at that point. Like, can I give a scenario? Can I give a real life scenario about something like this? So, two of my former teammates who actually watched this show of yours, by the way,
It's nice to know.
two of them were in a particular same situation. The following schools had commit offers from these schools, and they were getting pushed by each school for this amount of money to fully commit. And this was the first time that they were doing like NIL stuff, like etc. UCLA, Georgia, Florida, and Oregon offered him between, let's see what he said, $4 to $11.5 million for him, and that's on one individual, and that's one commit, full-time scholarship. You know, all the bells and whistles that go with all the perks. You know, special treatment, etc. And I told the guy, I said straight up honest to him, I said, these schools are just pushing to get you because they know you're that good. You're that talented. But not only that, they're just trying to push you with money because they know that you're a high quantity athlete. You're specially gifted. And so having that conversation with him, even his parents were saying like he should go on. His dad said that they had enough people to help around. But my buddy who watches this show, like I said, said, you know what? He said, screw it. I'm not doing it. He said, I'd rather work instead of get this cheap money. I'd rather work and get my, bank's worth of money by working. So that's kind of a scenario I wanted to say, Mark.
Well, Dan, we appreciate the call, and thanks for providing some insight there. And again, we are sorry for your loss.
Oh, and Mark, would you do me a favor and tell Matt Zymick, welcome back, sir. I've been missing you.
Okay. In kind of a creepy way, I guess we can tell him that. All right, folks, we appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. I appreciate the Real MVP dropping the link in the chat. The length of the show tonight is dependent on a number of things, especially since this is the 5th show of the day for me. So they tend to squeeze down if I'm not given some incentive. All right, so we got David showing up. David, what's going on tonight? We cannot hear you, sir. And we would love to hear you because I know.
No, is that better?
Yes.
Sorry. The mute button, Mark. I know you've been down that road before.
Yeah, it's right in front of me. I'm going to be using it more tonight, I'm sure.
I'm sure. Good to see you working the midnight hour, Mark. I like it. I like it.
Once in a while. I've been encouraged.
Well, I won't say hardest working man because I know you don't like that title. So,
well, I appreciate where that comes from you, and
yes,
God knows how many people through the years have called me the hardest working guy. No longer am I that. I might be the hardest. Anyway, yes, never liked that title, but I appreciate where that comes from. Absolutely.
Okay, it
Oh,
comes from
we
a good
lost.
place, my
No,
friend.
there you are.
I did want to talk about it. By the way, I missed your show on Saturday about Nico. Obviously, your time placement was at the same time the Ohio State spring game was on. So, although I guess I could have
Nico's time
multitasked. Maybe I could have
placement.
had the computer on. Yeah, that's true. Nico was probably in charge of that time placement, in as much as you were, Mark, I guess. But um, I want to make a couple of observations. First of all, I want to verify something that and make sure, and you can verify it again for me, I should say. Nico, in his recruitment to Tennessee, I thought was already paid $8 million. Is that correct?
Yes.
I
Yeah,
thought that
I
was the
know that
figure I
I know
heard.
that the figure 8 million is has been confirmed and was confirmed at the time, because there was the
Hmm.
big issue with the NCAA and Tennessee going to court and all of that business, and the NCAA was rendered useless and helpless in the situation. But how that ties into what he was being paid per season, which was reportedly 2.4 million, I don't know.
Okay. Okay. See, that's a figure that I heard. I was wondering
Yes,
if you could give some verification to that or
I can
not.
give verification to it, but how that plays into the 2.4, I don't know. I don't know if that was like a signing bonus, or if that was, yeah. I
Okay.
don't know if maybe he got 3.6 immediately, and then the other, well, I'm doing the math wrong, 4.6 and then 2.4 later. I don't know.
Yeah. I hadn't heard any further details on that. That's why I wanted to come to the voice
And
with
for the
that.
people that are going to correct me in the chat on my math, I screwed up the second time too. 5.6 and then 2.4, that would equal 8
Oh,
million. Okay.
okay. All right. So, just in looking at it, Mark, do you think that first of all, we see this, by the way, yet we continue to make a comparison between college football and the NFL. Um, do you think that this is a situation kind of like we see in the NFL where a quarterback is overvaluing himself? Because we see it so many times in the NFL that we see a lot of quarterbacks get overpaid in the NFL. Do you think this is in many? Now, obviously, you can say that this is advice that he's gotten from, the people around him, his quote unquote support group. But do you also think this is a situation where they came up with this figure because, oh, he's a quarterback, he's the most important player, and, we can get a high price tag here?
Well, the risk that he ran is very different than what an NFL quarterback runs in overvaluing himself,
Okay.
because they have a landing spot. Meaning, yes, do quarterbacks probably overvalue themselves in the NFL? They probably do, but the league pay structure and the approach of these teams pretty much backs it up. They reach for quarterbacks in the first couple rounds of the draft. They
Right.
overpay because generally there are 3 to 4 elite quarterbacks, and there's like 8 to 12 who are really good, and it kind of dissipates from there.
Right.
So if you have an opportunity to get one of those guys, even if he might be on the downside, or there might be some, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but if there are some possible red flags that could be
Hmm.
attached to a quarterback who's really good, who maybe won 2 national championships in college and was drafted in maybe the mid first round, but he was a really good quarterback, but there might be some red flags. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I
That
hear
you
where you're
might
going.
overpay and stretch for that
Yeah.
guy, even if he proved in the negotiating process that he would rather play for other teams. Yeah. So, but the problem in college is the floor for Nico was 0. Like, once he decided, okay, I make 2.4 million in Tennessee and I want 4 million,
Right.
he goes out into the open market, and apparently we heard Notre Dame, USC said no, Oregon said no,
Right.
North Carolina said no. There were a couple other teams in the SEC that said no, and he's landing at UCLA. Now, where on the pecking order was UCLA? He obviously didn't have to fall into the G5 classification, but I said this, Dave,
Sure.
when it happened, that I thought he probably and his brain trust screwed himself. But I also gave the caveat that much like the NFL draft, it only takes one. Meaning if there's a guy in the NFL draft, we've seen it a zillion times, who starts to plummet, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that have hit the news in recent days. All it takes is one team to say, you know what, we still want him. And it only takes one booster out there from a particular program to say, you know what, I want to be known in this booster club and in the circle of UCLA football as the guy that delivered the goods to get Nico here. So I'm going to do it. I don't know how good he is. I never saw him play a snap, maybe. But so he recovered. He had a bad stock market day. He lost about 40%, but he's still on his feet and making probably slightly more than anyone in the chat tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, that I mean, that income level is going to put you amongst the top earners out there in the country. That's for sure, Mark. I mean, first of all, I also want to comment about, because I hadn't also commented about just his abilities. I got about a 4-game sample size of him last year before the Ohio State game. Florida, Oklahoma, Alabama, and then Georgia at the end of the year. And one of the things that gave me confidence going into the playoff game was watching those 4 games and kind of seeing some of his limitations as a passer, as a quarterback. There's no doubt there needs to be some leveling up, as my friend Zach Smith uses that term quite a bit. But, some leveling up. There's got to be some growth there, at the quarterback position. Can he take that next step kind of thing? And for a quarterback that did not look great in some of those big games that I watched before the playoff game, and, that was one of the things that kind of gave me confidence going into that game. I think then, Samson gets hurt in the playoff game, and he was really, in a world of hurt at that point, because he had to carry that offense, with a 1,500-yard running back on the sideline, in that playoff game, and he was really in trouble. And plus, Ohio State's D-line was just getting after it. So, I mean, that all being said, it's interesting. I mean, you mentioned the bad advice he's getting from his support group. I wonder how closely, they watched him, or how much they looked at his game log like I just did, and just didn't walk away very impressed, and this is, again, kind of also why I was going to about overvaluing, let's say, a quarterback that I thought was at best kind of a mediocre college quarterback. I mean, that's how I would describe him, Mark. I don't know if that would be the term you would use with his level of play last year, but I didn't get a chance to hear your actual opinion on him as far as that goes.
Well, when you've got your father as representation,
yeah,
then there's an issue there, because that individual is going to be just slightly biased. I remember watching my kids
a little bit
on the playing field, and I always thought they were the best players on the field. Were they the best players on the field? Not always. But I always thought they were the best players on the field. So
Right.
I was not an unbiased observer of that, nor I'm sure was his dad, especially when he sees dollar signs. But, his first cue should have been, meaning his dad, that when they went to Oregon when they went behind Josh Heupel in Tennessee's back to Oregon, this is what is out there and established. And Dan Lanning said, no, and, we don't deal like that. Apparently, Dan Lanning was very upfront and actually went to Heupel and told him what was going on. They should have said,
Right.
you know what, okay. If there was better discretion there, it would have said, okay, you know what, we've got a great thing going at Tennessee. To your point, this kid was an average to decent quarterback in the SEC. He was 9th in the league in yardage, 9th in passer rating. He was okay. He was fine. He threw 19 touchdowns. He threw 5 picks.
Right.
Decent completion percentage. It was his first year starting. There's
Right.
all this upside. The guy can throw the ball through a brick wall, and he can throw it a mile. What I saw out of him last year, I saw him play Ohio State. I saw him play Georgia. I saw NC State, but of course, that
Did you
was
see the Alabama game, Mark?
I don't remember seeing the Alabama game. I know they won by a touchdown, but
Right.
he's got all the arm ability from I separate arm strength from arm talent. I don't know
Right.
that he's got a lot of arm talent, trajectory, touch, feathering the ball in. It's all coming out 100 miles an hour. And he didn't even show us, excuse me, he didn't even show us that much of that part of his game because I just think he was too reluctant. I didn't see him often in the pocket, just kind of making the read and going, bam, there's my guy. Boom, I'm laying it out there. He seemed tentative and he'd run around when he didn't need to and he'd dump it off and check down a lot. Now, in that Ohio State game, to his defense, as you just outlined, he's playing arguably the best defense in the country and arguably the best defensive front. And once he lost Dylan Sampson, he basically was their only threat, just tucking the ball under his arm and kind of making his way downfield. You know, that the last touchdown they scored obviously was completely inconsequential.
Right.
It was 42-10. And then the one touchdown drive that meant something was, I believe, at the end of the first half after they got the interception in the end zone.
Right.
And they scored to make it 21-10.
Yeah, I think they did get it to 21-10. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was okay. It's still a game. There's pressure on you. And that was all just tucking the ball under his arm and finding 6 yards and finding 4 and then escaping here and there. And that's what he is at this point. He's not a polished quarterback.
No. By the way, did Matt say that this shows an effort on the part of UCLA to try to win football games? Is this a sign that that this is a program that's serious about competing in the Big Ten and maybe, you know, trying to make an effort here to be competitive?
Well, that's what I was asking of this program when that announcement was made about them and USC. Are they just going to consider this the gravy train? And the administration's like, we don't care how many people show up at the games. It'd be nice because we'll make a little extra money. But all we care about is we're hooked up with the Big Ten and we get this massive media rights deal and we get our share. And, you know, the likes of the Big Ten hierarchy is going to come in here and fill up the Rose Bowl and we'll make a lot of money. Or will they take this as a challenge to say, you know, we don't want to be embarrassed in this conference. Now, they weren't embarrassed their first year, but they obviously weren't good either.
Right. Well, maybe he could be to Deshaun Foster what like Dorian Thompson-Robinson was to Chip Kelly. You know?
Yeah, he could be.
Right kind of dual threat quarterback that could help him win some games. Now, that was in the Pac, different conference, but
he's a better quarterback than Ethan Garbers, and certainly has a lot more potential.
Right. Yeah, no doubt this is an upgrade for them. Okay, hey, Mark, I wanted to get to the Big Ten. I was going to do this on a Big Ten call-in show because they were having a discussion. I don't normally talk about Maryland, but it kind of brought up a thought to me. And I actually have a comp for Maryland. I wanted to throw it out to you. But you know, and I guess maybe expectations for Maryland could be interesting. You know, obviously we know how tough the Big Ten is, but you look at kind of the trajectory Mike Loxley's had that program on. I know he had a couple of 8-win seasons there. With a losing season last year, is it fair to say he's a hot seat guy, by the way?
I put him on a hot seat list.
Okay.
I don't know if that's what Maryland is thinking. I don't know if that's their. I think that a lot of these schools are more apt to pull the trigger sooner because they know that they can't let things go downhill for long, that it's that much tougher to reverse it. And I think that's what Wisconsin was doing in letting go of Paul Christ. So I do think, and against that schedule, they play 3 nobodies in the non-conference. They get 3 gimme wins. All they have to do is win 3 games in the Big Ten to get to 6. That probably keeps him around. But anything other than that, and it's not just that, a second consecutive down season, but we're looking at 6 to 7 years into a tenure where you're as bad as you were when you started and you already reached a peak of sorts and you've leveled off and now declined for a second consecutive year. So,
you know, the interesting thought is I had put this in a comment in the chat, and the response was, well, what has Maryland really ever achieved as a program? I mean, in looking at the last 20 years or so, I think they had, 3 straight 10-win seasons in the ACC back in the early 2000s, Mark, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Now, that's the ACC. That's not the Big Ten as we know it right now.
No.
And, you take a look at it, and I guess that's also the other thing too, Mark, is what are the legitimate expectations for this program, and what they've achieved since they've joined the Big Ten, but here's the thing, Mark, and I was going to throw this out as a comp, because you had mentioned that there's a certain program in the SEC that has is in the right part of the country to get talent and should be doing better. Is Maryland the South Carolina of the Big Ten?
In many ways, yes. Now,
Okay.
they don't benefit from the support that South Carolina benefits from. South Carolina fills its stadium. Maryland doesn't. They're on the low end of the Big Ten in regards to fan support.
Okay.
So there's a difference there. Recruiting footprint.
Yeah, that's where I was going.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, Mike Loxley's legacy, that almost seems like a misplaced word. His
Right.
track record, his tenure, has been what Maryland was before that. They produce some NFL receivers. They've got some more headed to the league this year and some defensive backs, but they can't. Makes me think of the question I asked Mike Loxley when I was at Big Ten Media Days 2 years ago.
Yeah.
There are some reports that you feel good about this line play on the offensive and defensive side, but are we going to see it against the better teams in the league? And of course we didn't, but he said we would.
Right. Yeah. Well, he says a lot of things, he was, I still remember him and Gaddis fighting over the success of the Alabama air raid offense there for a period of time. I always thought that back and forth was quite entertaining there for about a year or so.
I don't know how the guy got the job to begin with.
Well, he's from the area. I think that he felt that they felt that his inroads and knowledge of the area. But like you said, the DMV is a very fertile recruiting base. Look at what Ohio State has done. You get a Haskins, you get a Chase Young, you get guys like that out of that area. So, I mean, that area is loaded with a fair amount of talent, no doubt about it.
Yes.
I did want to. By the way, Mark, bigger. Maybe you've already addressed this, and maybe this is an obvious one, but bigger hot seat next year: Brent Venables or Brian Kelly.
Brent Venables. Yeah. Brent Venables is staring at a third bad season out of 4.
Yeah.
And the expectation should be roughly the same at both schools. And Brian Kelly, for as much as people tend to make fun of him and think that he's underachieved, he has underachieved, but it's so slightly. He's still finishing 9-4, 10-3 every year.
Right. I guess everybody looked at the last 3 coaches at LSU won national titles was always the thing.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And
LSU was in worse shape when Brian Kelly took over than what Brent Venables took over from Lincoln Riley.
True. Yeah. A lot of people there in Oklahoma didn't think that Lincoln left things on the best of terms there, though, either, Mark.
Well, he didn't leave on the best of terms because he's scooted out of town and talked to his team for 5 minutes. But in regards to what he left the team, of course, he took his quarterback with him.
Right.
But they went out and got Dylan Gabriel. So they replaced Caleb Williams about as well as you could. But and all of these seasons, so 2 out of the 3 seasons that Brent Venables has obviously put out there were in the Big 12. It's not like it's an apples to oranges comparison. It is now, but not then. So, yeah, I will say that Brian Kelly took over a much worse situation at LSU than what Brent Venables took over at Oklahoma.
I'm not going to disagree with you. I actually agree with you. It's Venables, and to me, it's not even close between the two. Although I will say, people will look back, maybe a few years from now, if Kelly is gone from LSU, and wonder how in 2023 he had Jaden Daniels, Thomas, and Neighbors at wide receiver, and they lost 3 games. Now, I know the defense was bad, but imagine if they just played halfway decent defense that year with that offense. I mean,
I can't argue with that because he would have had more of an excuse pre-transfer portal. But you really have no excuse at this point, maybe for the next season, but not 2 seasons down the road, meaning he took over in 2021. They were awful in 2020. They played a bowl game in 2020 and they had like no players, like everybody left. He took over a roster that was ambushed, but you've got a transfer portal. So coaches are fixing things that know what they're doing, are fixing things rather quickly. What's ironic about his failings, that might be a little bit strong of a word, his shortcomings on the scoreboard has been, you can look at almost every coach post transfer portal and their outcome of the expectations is tied directly to the decision that they made at quarterback. Did they stay with what they had? And did they get burned or did it pay off? Or did they go get somebody? And did they get burned or did it pay off? DJ Uiagalelei, we can go Mike Norvell. We can go all different directions with that. Or did Hugh Freeze stay pat with Peyton Thorne and go 5-7 again? Well, that's what he did. So you can tie these quarterback decisions directly to, he got the quarterback decisions right, but they still didn't pull out the games that they needed to.
Now their defense has been awful the last couple of years.
Yeah, you don't expect that out of LSU either.
Right. Although the team that won, well, the 19 team, I guess their defense got better at the end of the year, but that was really an offensive team, of course, an all-time. Yeah. Hey, last thing, Mark, I know you got other callers. Real quick, I know you say you used to be an NFL draft guy. Are you going to do anything NFL draft-wise, or I don't know if you're going to do a show during the draft. I mean, it's still college football. Obviously, we're talking about.
Well, I used to go nuts on the NFL draft here, but I haven't in recent years. Now I'll let you know, since you asked, David, I actually got an invite to the NFL draft. And it looks like I can fly for free. I can stay for free. I can do just about everything for free at the NFL draft.
Nice.
We'll see if that comes together. I didn't ask for it. This is a buddy of mine who has certain connections, and so the last he was talking to me, he was trying to make plans. And I have to admit, my gut reaction to that is that sounds like a lot of like a big hassle. Like I don't want to go, but I know that I'll have a great time if I just do it.
Hey, I gotta say, on the one Buckeye, because I have to mention a Buckeye. Will Howard is getting. Listen to the McAfee show from time to time. Find you someone who loves you the way McAfee likes him some Will Howard. By the way,
oh yeah,
and he likes him some Will Howard. Gruden, by the way, had a great interview with him and really liked him. I was always dubious, even when he was on this playoff run, that he could translate to the NFL as a quarterback. I thought he's basically looking at being a clipboard quarterback for pretty much his career. And I'm that just shows you I'm not trying to show any bias here. Although I do think he obviously helped himself big time with that playoff run, of course. But that being said, I mean, I don't know if you see it, Mark, but I'm hearing like 3rd round, maybe 4th round for him. But if you have a quick thought on that before we go.
Well, I've not looked at the NFL draft forever in regards to trying to take what I think of these guys in college and
how they translate.
But
yeah,
that seems pretty reasonable to me.
Okay. Just a thought.
I got to say, I know he made one bad play at Michigan. I know that he mistimed a run at Oregon by a half a second and all that. But, man, that's a tough position to play with a lot of pressure, a lot of split-second decisions to be made. And he played in that playoff run and really the majority of the season about as well as I could have expected. I tell you, when they signed him, my initial thought was, that's a really good signing. I like Will Howard, and I really like what he did at Kansas State. Then I have to admit, I kind of backed off of that. The more I thought about it and thought, he did that at Kansas State, and my evaluation of somebody at Kansas State and what they bring to the table, and a nice, delivering a nice 9-4 season versus what the expectations at Ohio State. I was starting to back off of that and think, I don't know if he's really good enough to carry this Ohio State offense, but he was sharp.
Well, I had gone into the season basically saying he only needed to be a slight upgrade from what we had from Honda from the year before, because I knew the team around him was going to be that good. And he was more than a slight upgrade than what we got from Honda in 23. Yeah. And, although I will say the one thing to be leery about him, he did have that, and I said this to you during the regular season, that one, why did you make that kind of throw still in him over a course of like that middle portion of the season, even at the end of the season, that was one thing that kind of I was leery about, but certainly that playoff run more than made up for it, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Mark. Well, great show. You're coming back. What are you going to do during the week? Are you going to do some 9 o'clocks? You're going to do some 11 o'clocks next week? What's up?
Well, I'm here every day at 4 p.m. Eastern. So that's the set schedule, Monday through Friday, but we take one of those and we move it late night. And when that's going to be, I don't know. Excuse me. Although, based on my personal schedule tomorrow, it appears as though I could be showing up at any time. It's probably not going to be during the day. So we might have another late night on Thursday night.
All right, my friend. Well, keep up the good work. I won't call you the hardest working man because I know you don't like it, but keep up the good work, my friend.
Thank you, David. I appreciate it. David Greenshield, we appreciate David. We see a lot, see some old timers here. DeReal's about to call. David's an old timer. See Tim Prangley in the chat, an old timer. Good. DeReal MVP, what's going on, man?
Not much. How about you, Mark?
I am doing well.
Have you ever seen as big of an own goal as Nico Iamaleava has committed on himself? I mean,
well, I'm sure I have at some point, but it's going to take me some time to remember that one because, he actually got out of this reasonably well, but still it's a downgrade in money. It's a downgrade in location, meaning football location and coaching development for the next level. I heard some dumb reports out there. Not the reports weren't dumb, but that, he was going to kind of pass this off as, well, this is a better fit for what I like to do in an offense. UCLA has not been a good fit for anyone offensively. And to leave one of the best offensive minds in the game to go to UCLA, well, that's a bit ridiculous. And obviously he's just trying to spin it the right way.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, do you think that's just about saving face, or do you think that's like a pride thing?
There's pride that runs in the family. That's for sure. It comes from his dad. That's for sure. There's a lot of pride there. And I'm not talking about the good sense of pride. I'm talking about the type of pride that gets in your way and causes you to make bad decisions and elevate yourself beyond the marketplace and all the misjudgments they made in this situation. When, to me, it's simply, you've been in the program for 2 years. You're learning from one of the best offensive minds in the game. Plus, he is going to give you as many opportunities as possible based on the offense that he runs, to make plays, show yourself to be skilled, to get better. You've been in the system 2 years. You played as the starter 1 year. Were you great? No. Were you awful? No. You were decent. You were a mid-level SEC quarterback, but you made a playoff. Your team got you there. Your defensive line and your running back got you to the playoff. So you got that on your accomplishment list. And now you can go into and let's understand that we don't know the NIL deal numbers for the majority of these players, but we got a pretty good feel for what's out there. And he's being overpaid at Tennessee, and that's not good enough for him, or not good enough for his dad. And they got to try to squeeze Tennessee for a 60% raise or whatever, another $1.5 million to get to $4 million. And that's where it got to be ridiculous. And I'm glad that the University of Tennessee stood up to him. Now, if he was a better player, then maybe they would not have stood up to him. But then again, maybe the raise would have been justified if he were Bryce Young going from, it's a bad example because he was phenomenal from year one. But if he was Joe Burrow going from year one at LSU, 16 touchdowns and 5 picks to 60 touchdowns, and he deserved that kind of raise, well, that's a different deal.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And now everybody's talked about the Nico perspective and some of the UCLA perspective. I'm fascinated with what Tennessee does because there's nobody left that's decent. Like, to me, I know it's only April 16th, but there's a legitimate argument Tennessee season's over.
Meaning they can't get to a playoff.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they've got 2 highly inexperienced quarterbacks, and Jake Merklinger and George McIntyre. They have really high ceilings, and they're highly recruited. We have seen a lot of quarterbacks who can start right out of the gate and play well. So these guys have to take their first snaps at some point. So we'll see. At least they've got 2 of them. So there's a possibility that one of them will prove capable.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. Tennessee, I think, is just completely screwed. Like, the +3, -3 thing, I think the -3 is...
Yeah, 7 and 5 is a possibility. I don't remember who they play in the non-conference this year, but they play somebody decent somewhere. We'll have to look that up. But don't be surprised if his replacement, meaning one of those 2 guys, turns in a statistical season that is somewhat comparable to his, at least throwing the ball.
They play Syracuse on the road, by the way.
Okay. Well, that has become a more interesting game.
Yeah, I mean, I get it what you're saying, but I just don't see it personally. And speaking of the playoffs, Mark, I think half the teams in this year's playoff is going to be different teams than last year. What are your thoughts on that?
Excuse me. So it's hard to see Indiana making the playoff again. It will be difficult for SMU to make the playoff again. Not that Arizona State's not going to be competitive, because I'm super impressed with Kenny Dillingham. I think he's here to stay, and I think he's one of the bright young coaches in college football. But just by the sheer chance that 9 different teams can win the Big 12, most likely they're not going to be the one. So take out Arizona State. I've not done any kind of dive on Boise State to see what they have, but they're always one of the top 3 to 4 group of 5 programs. So we'll see there. So we're looking at 3 to 4 that will be missing. Ohio State, Texas, etc. Tennessee, of course, looks to be on the outside looking in. So we're up to 5. So that's roughly half. So yeah, I see something close to that. It's going to be difficult for Oregon to get back to the playoff.
Yeah, so I think there's going to be a narrative push this year that the playoff just has a lot of parity, because half the teams, or even more, could be new.
Do you think that's right, or just circumstantial?
I think it's largely circumstantial, because I don't think in most years Indiana would get into the playoff, or an Indiana caliber team. I don't think the ACC is going to get 2 teams in normally. I don't think the SEC is going to be as down as they were last year.
You would have loved the conversation I had the other day. So about a week ago, 2 weeks ago, I went through the Big Ten win totals, and I looked at the schedule, went win total versus schedule, and I sized up Indiana. And of course, I shook my finger at them for being pathetic for scheduling no one. I hate that. I try to do my very best to take all programs to task if they schedule no one. I think it's pathetic that you're a Big Ten team and you schedule no one and you play 3 high school teams. So that was part of it. The other part was I basically said, this looks like an uninspiring 8-4 season. They'll go 5-4 in the Big Ten. They play 3 high school teams. They can't help but win those games. They'll go 8-4, but really not be that good. And our Indiana guy, shout out to Alec Keyser, does a great job. Indiana show on Tuesday night, everyone. They're building up a great channel over there. But Alec took exception to me. I get a text from Alec, and he's like, I totally disagree with you on your takes for Indiana. And I'm like, that sounds good. Let's talk about it. So you would have enjoyed that, because, we got to a point where he's throwing out the likes of Ole Miss and South Carolina. And I would have loved to have seen Indiana take those teams down. And like, yeah, I really don't think you would have seen them take the likes of South Carolina and Ole Miss down last year.
Yeah, I think they were around the 20th best teams in the country.
Bingo.
Honestly,
Bingo.
right. Right.
That was
If
my
they
number.
played USC, I don't know who wins that game. And
Exactly.
USC was 6-6.
I'm watching them play Notre Dame, and just Notre Dame's conservative approach kept it respectable. That's what kept it respectable, is Notre Dame had Riley Leonard just run the ball and throw short passes. And of course, they're not the team that's going to stomp on your jugular. So, it's 20-3 for most of the game, 27-3 in the fourth quarter. And then they scored 2 meaningless touchdowns that make it look good, but they got controlled in that game, easily controlled. And I'm watching that thinking, maybe USC could have done better. Iowa could have done better. Illinois possibly could have done better in this game.
Yeah, and thanks for the correction, Tim. 7-6. I can't forget about that massive bowl win against Texas A&M. Got to respect these bowl games nowadays, with 55% of the teams not playing.
Joe Long is calling me out for BS. I don't know what that means. You're full of it. Guess he doesn't like my Indiana take. Joe, please call and explain yourself.
Yeah, I honestly don't understand what he's talking about. But I know I've mentioned this to you before, but for teams like Indiana that intentionally don't schedule anybody, do you think that should be written within the committee's statute that we're going to penalize you for not intentionally scheduling anybody good?
Well, I think they would have been if they would have lost one more game. That 10-2 versus the 9-3s from the SEC teams would have knocked them out. But they just happened to win. And this is, I'm going to go back to one of your points, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that a lot of the playoff committee probably had the same perspective of what I just communicated. Well, we can't knock out an 11-1 Indiana team for a 9-3 SEC team. But if they were 10-2, so them winning a game against Rutgers or Maryland was enough to turn the playoff committee's decision, basically.
Right. I think they should have additional measurements like wins against top 50 teams or wins against Power 4 teams or wins against teams on the road that are ranked within the top 25. I think they should use more analytical data because just like Indiana going 11-1 is like meaningless because 3 of those wins anybody could have played. I mean, honestly, 12 of us, the absolute 12 best athletic of your subscribers, Mark, could have played and probably beaten some of the teams that Indiana scheduled. That's how bad of teams they were playing.
This is true. They beat one team with a winning record. Well, Nebraska won its bowl game to get to 7-6. So they beat 2 teams with winning records, Nebraska and Michigan.
Right. And I think that Michigan game was the best performance that Indiana played all year.
Yes.
And it was the closest game. But Indiana in the second half of that game looked atrocious. I mean, just watching that game live, it was fairly obvious to me. Oh, I don't want to say like Army, but they were similar in Army that their ranking and stuff and their hype was completely fraudulent.
They were hanging on for dear life. They gained about 20 yards of offense in the second half. And to their credit, the Ohio State game wasn't an embarrassment by any stretch.
Yeah, but Ohio State was never really within any level of threat at all of losing that game.
No. True.
So, Mark, let me ask you about this upcoming season. What are you looking forward to the most of this upcoming season? Is there any storyline or anything that's grabbing your attention early in this offseason?
Wow, that's a great question. That is an interesting question. Do we have quarterbacks in places that Kalen DeBoer at Alabama to see if he is truly cut out for that job or if he's going to continue to struggle? I think there are a lot of they mostly involve coaches that are big names that have underachieved. And with DeBoer, it's only one season, but Brian Kelly, Brent Venables, this SEC is so stacked and so close with good teams, not great teams, that what comes out of that beyond Georgia and Texas is going to be fascinating.
I got you. And something else I was going to ask you about is the spring games. Do you think they're just on life support now? Or are they going to be completely going away? Because I'm seeing like pictures on Twitter of like Alabama a spring game from 2024 to 2025, and there's like hardly anybody in the 2025 one. That's just one example. None of them are being televised on TV, which is kind of strange. Yeah. Outside of like 2 or 3, I saw Virginia, Ohio State was televised on TV, but it doesn't seem like a marquee event that it used to be where people would look forward to it. It just seems like an afterthought now.
Well, we only have to go back 1 year, and I can speak for the Big Ten, the ACC, and the SEC. And just about all of those games, even last year, were on their respective conference networks. And this year, I counted 12 out of 70 of the power conference teams were on television this spring. Michigan's not going to be on TV. They're going to play a game this Saturday, but it's not on TV. And the point that you made about the number of people at the game, take Ohio State for an example. There were like 35,000 people there. They've put 90, 100,000 in for a spring game when they hyped it up. And I think they suffered from the aura, the malaise that's over college football concerning these spring games. Because if you just tuned into the Ohio State spring game and it was isolated, okay, this is 2025, this is the Ohio State spring game. You can go back to 2018 and look at one. They don't look that much different. But the overall malaise of this being kind of a dying breed, and does it really matter? And what did we really get out of this? And hardly anybody else is playing. So, the place was... didn't seem to have much energy. I guess so. It didn't happen in stages, that's for sure. Pretty much fell off the cliff this year when these coaches got paranoid about exposing their players on television with the transfer portal.
So I guess, Mark, all the conspiracy theory people in college football thinks ESPN and Fox runs everything. I would say this is pretty strong evidence that they do not run everything, because ESPN and Fox, I can almost guarantee, would rather show spring football than whatever they were showing on.
Yeah, you're making a logical point, but I don't necessarily know if it's true. Based on my knowledge of these TV listings with the spring games, for example, the SEC network 5 years ago, you'd see all the spring games, every April Saturday, there'd be a lineup of about 4 of them in a row. They seem to have been moving those to the SEC Network Plus more and more, with baseball and especially softball emerging as a marketable sport. Now, I don't know if that was ESPN telling us softball is more popular than spring football, therefore we're going to go with the ratings getter, or the spring football, and it's the SEC, is still more popular, but we're going to make you pay for it. And we think that people will pay for it. So we're going to move them to this SEC Plus business.
It's free.
I don't have an answer for that.
Plus, SEC Plus is free if you got SEC Network, unlike the Big Ten.
All right.
That's another example, by the way, why the SEC is superior than the Big Ten.
That's why the SEC is superior to the Big Ten?
I said another reason. I didn't say the reason. I said another reason. I'm not paying $5 to watch lacrosse or badminton or rowing.
Well, some people will.
Yeah, I know. And those people are few and far between, Mark.
Well, I love your takes on most of this, but I'm not really understanding that. I understand that from a fan's perspective, that you don't want to pay for extra sports, but I don't see how that makes a league superior. What I'm looking for... I can't find my free spring games sign, and I made up a sign a couple weeks ago. I think these spring games should be free. That's my take.
Yeah, like what Coastal Carolina's doing with their concessions and stuff.
I love that. If you find a decent Coastal Carolina t-shirt that's teal, so it stands out, and you can find a large, let me know. Send me the link, because I scoured the internet the next day looking for a Coastal Carolina. They're my team for 2025. Free concessions. I think that's phenomenal. Love it.
Yeah, it's nice to see at least one team in college football care about the fans.
And you know what the first thing I did, Daryl, when I saw that is I thought, okay, I'm going to look up their attendance. Actually, we were on live when I saw that, and I had Jackson look up the capacity of the stadium versus the attendance, thinking, oh, they're wanting to fill up the 8,000 or 9,000 empty seats every game by giving this little benefit here. But that wasn't the case. They sold out all their games.
That's good. I mean, Coastal Carolina's a legit program. They were ranked a few years ago. They're a relevant program, so
yeah.
They got a beautiful stadium. They're right by the water in Myrtle Beach, and I like their logo and their team name, the Chanticleers. It's unique, it's different, and their offense that they've ran over the last few years is something unlike any other team does in college football. So it's fun watching their games. I like that about it. Now everybody just runs the spread offense. It can get boring. And that's why I like watching the Army, Navy, Coastal type teams. It's different.
I also like that during the COVID season, I'm not getting them confused with somebody. They did play BYU, right? It was Coastal Carolina.
Yes.
That scheduled
BYU scheduled them.
Yeah. They scheduled like on Wednesday or something and decided to play. I thought that was great.
Yeah, that was a ranked on ranked matchup. That was like playoff implications was that game that year. I think that should happen more often. Listen, the college football is a complete mess right now. So if you're a bubble team and you're in the SEC, why not? If you're not playing in championship week, just schedule a Big Ten bubble team and have it played out on the field instead of having some stupid committee member decide it. That, at least that's my opinion. I know it's not going to happen, but I think that would help the sport overall. And what are your thoughts, speaking of the spring games, that Colorado and Syracuse was going to do a spring game, but the NCAA and their infinite wisdom decided to axe it for some reason?
I love it. Deion Sanders never met a camera that he didn't like, and he's going to put his team and his mug in front of a camera anytime he can. And Colorado, I don't know if it's this Saturday or the next Saturday, actually does play on ESPN2, but they wanted to play somebody, and I think that would just be interesting for the fans to see two teams go at it. I kind of reminisce that my first not real sporting event, but it was played by professionals, was actually a NFL scrimmage between the Buffalo Bills and the Cleveland Browns when I was like 7 years old at Kent State, just watching two NFL teams scrimmage. I thought it was great. Yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah, and I think it would improve the level of competition. I think both teams would actually try more than what they're trying now, because there's a pride involved in it. And it may influence some fan perceptions about who's better and who it can be headlines for a few days to attract recruits and stuff like that. But why do you think the NCAA decided to say no to this idea? I don't understand the negative side of this deal if everyone wants to do
it. Excuse me. I did not read into their decision and what they stated as a reason for it. I don't know that you did.
I did not.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to know, is this going to happen or not going to happen? And I wasn't surprised that it was not going to. Anytime you get any kind of bureaucracy involved, for the most part, they're not going to make quick changes. They're going to be wary. They're going to be conservative. And they're going to say, even though we don't have a real reason not to do this, you've sprung this on us too late. And even though it was shown on countless occasions 5 years ago that teams could schedule games on Wednesday and go travel cross country for real football, that we can't have a school traveling a couple thousand miles to play a couple scrimmages. So I did not look into the decision in regards to them giving a reason for it.
I mean, it doesn't make
injuries in there. I saw something about injuries.
I mean, football players playing football injuries are a part of it. So I guess we should just cancel everything because we can't get
sport. Yeah.
Right, exactly. People are just getting too soft nowadays, in my opinion. But Mark, that's all I got for you. Can't wait till the next Tennessee disaster happens. You love to see it.
Thanks, Daryl. Appreciate it. And of course, Daryl loves the Tennessee disasters because he is a Kentucky fan. I asked for a Joe Long call. Look at this. Somebody for once is stepping up. I do this all the time on Twitter. when people have snide remarks to say. Not that Joe did. I'm not saying that Joe did, but snide remarks on Twitter. All I state all the time is call me. Call me. All right, Joe, what's going on?
Hey, Mark.
How you doing?
I'm doing okay. I just called because you challenged. What's going on?
I apparently said something wrong.
Well, it's not that you're wrong. It's just that you're arrogant. You know,
I don't even know what you're talking about, but so you'll need to explain what I'm being arrogant about.
When you talked about how you dismissed the Notre Dame championship game with Ohio State.
What?
You dismissed the Notre Dame
rewind. You may want to rewind and listen. I've not said anything during this entire live stream.
You said the game was over, basically, and they got 2 meaningless touchdowns.
Indiana versus Notre Dame.
No.
That's what I was talking about. Indiana versus Notre Dame. Notre Dame was leading 27-3. Indiana scored 2 touchdowns in the final 90 seconds of the game. Those were 2 meaningless touchdowns. That's what I was talking about.
Okay. I thought you were talking about Notre Dame.
No, that was a competitive game. Ohio State was clearly the better team, but shoot, Notre Dame was within a score. And obviously, Ohio State was down to a third down play. And if they don't convert, they're punting the ball with 2 minutes left. So, no, I did not say that about the national championship game. We were talking about Indiana. The whole conversation was about Indiana. And then I was talking about how I perceived their game against Notre Dame as not being competitive.
Okay, well then I don't have a complaint then.
Okay. Well, thanks for clarifying, Joe.
Yeah. Okay.
Anything else you want to talk about?
Well, I'm telling you now, I think Notre Dame's going to be very, very good this year coming up. And this guy CJ Carr is the real deal. I don't know. Did you get to watch the Notre Dame spring game?
I did not.
Have you heard of CJ Carr?
Oh, yeah. I know who CJ Carr is. Yes.
Yeah. Well, he's going to be, I think he's going to grow up really fast. And it's what they're going to need. But I think he's up to it just based on what I saw from him in that spring game. He's going to make, if he gets to play instead of Angeli, he's going to wind up making their run game much more effective because he can throw it, and he can throw it deep, and he can throw it deep and accurate. So I'm really hoping, this last year was a growing up year for Notre Dame. They got their lumps and bruises, even though, they only lost the one game until the championship. They were a very young team. And, that championship game, I don't think Ohio State scores 31 points on them had they had their 4 starters, which was Botelho, Traore at the ends on the Vipers, and Mills at the middle defensive tackle, as well as Benjamin Morrison. I mean, I don't think they get 31 points if those guys are playing for Notre Dame in this last year. But now this year, I mean, their running back, again, is a powerhouse full of kids, and their quarterback, if it's CJ Carr, and it should be, and then Kenny Minchie should be number 2, and Angeli, unfortunately, he needs to find a team with a group of 5 kind of a team where he can play a vanilla offense and he'll be very good, but he's just not championship material. So when I see CJ Carr, I see the potential for Notre Dame to do a lot of good things. What do you think?
Well, all I know about CJ Carr is his, recruiting rankings and what people have said about how good he is, much like a Bryce Underwood or a Tavian St. Clair at Ohio State and I usually do watch the Notre Dame spring game, but did not see this one. Now, Steve Angeli, the only time I really watched him play was against Penn State and against Ohio State, correct? One of those 2 games,
it was Penn State when he came in right before the half and got him a field goal. But drive
and led led the team down the field. Yeah, he's not a dynamic quarterback, but certainly based on what I've seen and what I know about him, I would think that a lot of teams could do much worse.
I agree.
Not elite teams, but he could go play for Virginia Tech or somebody.
Right.
All right, Joe.
All right. Yeah,
I appreciate
guess
you
that's
calling.
it. All right, Mark. I'm sorry for that mix-up.
That's all right.
I thought you were talking about Notre Dame and you were talking about Indiana.
All right. I'll end the phone call, then I'll trash Notre Dame.
Okay, bud.
All right, Joe. Appreciate it.
See ya.
All right. It's good to talk. See? You have a misunderstanding. It's good to talk. All right. Very good. We've got George here. This may be it for the night. George has his Florida jersey on.
Oh, these old rags.
These old rags.
It's nothing, man. It's just some old stuff. I threw on.
Your 2025 championship jersey.
You do?
I'm saying that could be your 2025 jersey.
Thank you. Hey, I have a bone to pick earlier. You were talking trash about my Gators.
What did I say?
Something about Indiana would have kicked their ass or something.
Nobody.
They didn't even make the playoffs.
Is nobody hearing what I'm saying tonight? I think there's
the difference between me and everybody else is I'm just joking with you.
Okay.
I'm not serious.
I did not say anything about Florida tonight.
I know you didn't. That's beside the point, God darn it.
I still don't get George's jokes. How's that?
I wrote something down on a napkin here. It says, "Aren't Notre Dame fans cute?" Don't answer that. It's a rhetorical question.
I don't know. Joe didn't turn on his camera, so I don't know. I can't answer that.
Right. I mean, just psychically, psychologically.
Yeah, exactly. That's when you didn't get my sarcasm. All right. Minnie's asking what you're drinking tonight.
Is that somebody's real name, Minnie Hunt? Because I can think of some play on words with that one. She's probably heard it before.
I've known Minnie for all of about 3 weeks here, and I'm believing that I am talking to Minnie Hunt.
I'm just saying, if she's really on a Minnie Hunt, I'm 5'6". I weigh 145. Can't get much more Minnie than that. So I could be the guy.
I would like to play go between, but maybe I
no. That was a joke. I was joking. I'm always joking, or I would get kicked off YouTube.
Right, George. What's next on the napkin there?
I went through the whole process of getting on StreamYard. You got to give them your firstborn and access to your tablet. I mean, just everything. All permissions, right? Every time.
I don't have to do it. I don't know.
It used to be automatic for me, but now every time I got to push all them buttons. And I was in the back room and my tablet shut down and restarted. I was like, what the heck? Bean, I love Minnie. I'm joking around with her. If I didn't love you, I wouldn't joke with you. She talks to me in the chat. She's my friend. I can do the chat at the same time, but I think it's rude to the host. So,
well, if you can multitask, then you're a better man than me, George.
Nobody can multitask. That's a fallacy. It's not true.
I was just telling somebody the exact same thing.
It's impossible to do two things at the same time.
It's technically
You're kidding yourself. You might be doing one thing for a zillionth of a second and something else for a zillionth of a second, but you can only do one thing at once. Come on, let's get real. It's provable.
We may end this live stream early because I'm out of lemon water. And
the answer to many is apple cider vinegar, because this is a family show, and I don't want to make kids think it's cool to drink anything except apple cider vinegar while you're detoxing
that is good for you.
for
I
the
started
children.
at some point and gave it up.
You know, Mark, you had a side channel where you would read inspirational sentences to people. You remember? You still have it, I think.
Yes, I
Right.
do. I do.
So here's a story. I told you once by accident, through no fault of my own, I got in trouble and ended up in jail, right?
Okay. Yes.
While I was in there, there's a guy sleeping on the top bunk above me. I'm on the bottom bunk. His name is Rick Barnes. That's the coach at Tennessee, the basketball coach, Rick
Yeah.
Barnes.
Okay.
Back then, is still a basketball coach. He was the head coach at Clemson for a while too, right? But anyway,
Clemson, Texas, Tennessee. Yep.
right. That's pretty good. That's basketball. You know that too. But the guy's name was Rick Barnes. Same name, exact.
Oh, but it wasn't the Rick Barnes.
No, but he kind of looked like him, which is really freaky now. I'm like, was that Rick Barnes? But it wasn't. It wasn't. You know what he was in for? He had like 100-year-old friend. He would drive from state to state to state. They had a circuit. And the old man looked like death warmed over. And he would go into random doctors just in a 5-state circuit and get all the pain pills he could get. And then they couldn't get him no more. So they pulled over a semi that left the pharmaceutical warehouse and robbed. Have you ever heard of anybody doing something like that? I haven't. That's the only time I heard that one. Like, you robbed a pharmaceutical semi, you opened up the back and threw all the boxes out till you found the ones you wanted.
Yeah. George, most times that you get on here, I hear something that I've never heard before.
But listen what he told me. He jumped down off his bed one day and he looked at me and he pointed his finger and he went, "George, I believe in your God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." He said those words to me. He was an atheist and agnostic. And after a couple of months with me, he had an epiphany. He said, "I'll worship your God." That's some good stuff, huh? You know why? You know why he did that?
You're convincing, George.
The 3 most evil people in the prison were messing with me. Big dudes. I told you, I'm 5'6", you know? And Rick said to me, "What are you going to do?" I told you I became a shot caller after this. Rick said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "I'm going to pray to my God. My God will take care of it." Mark, within a week and a half, they were all gone from the prison. One guy got beat up so bad by somebody else, they had to take him to the hospital. He never came back because he'd be in danger there. The next guy got caught bringing drugs in. They pulled him out of his mouth. And the third guy got more charges on the outside and had to go back to court, got sentenced again and went to a more serious prison. And that's why Rick said, "I believe in your God." He's like, you took 3 people out without getting off your bunk, you know? Because I told him I'm going to ask God to get him out of my face. Mark, these are the exact words I said to that man. I said, I prayed to God, and I said to God, "Please get these motherfuckers out of my face before I kill them and do life." I swear to God, that was my prayer. That's how I talked to God, because God appreciates honesty. I was like, if you don't get them out of my face, I'm going to punch them in the throat and rip their head off. And I don't want to do life in prison, God. So please help. That's what my prayer was. And bam, bam, bam. And Rick said, "I believe in your God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." Because I used to talk to him about this stuff, about Genesis, and Jacob had 12 sons, and why it's called that name, and why Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Why that guy? I told him. I explained it to him.
You were not the typical evangelist, George.
I know.
It's good.
And Mark, I swear to God, whites, blacks, and Cubans were in that place, mostly. we all got along like we're blood brothers. There was absolutely none of the shit they talk about nowadays. This is all man-made. They just forced it on a system. Like, you got to be in a gang and you got to do this and that, you know? They told me when I got there, everybody has to have a partner. If you don't have a partner, you'll get knifed or stabbed or something. And I get no, that sounded gay to me. Nothing against gay people. If they want a partner, it's fine.
Well, that would be my next question. When we talk about a partner, what kind of partners are we talking about?
It's a legitimate thing. It's a legitimate thing. When you play spades, you got to have a partner for spades, right? And you want a partner like on pickup basketball in a rec area. So it was legitimate, but I didn't know that. I just got there. I thought I was being punked out. You know what I mean? So I'm the only guy that didn't have a partner for like the first 6 months. And then I went to the skinniest guy in the whole prison, but he was the best card player. And I said, "You want to be my partner?" And he said, "Yeah." And he was my partner. And I would give him like $5 and he would go play spades. And he won us free ice cream, free everything. It was all free because he never lost. So I picked my partner based on card skills, not he, because he was smaller than me, you know, but he was a damn good card player. Good time.
Keep in contact with any of these guys, George?
No, but if I win the lottery and they're alive, I'll find some of them. You know, Mark, in the Air Force, I was the youngest club manager in the history of the Air Force prior to this unfortunate event that happened to me when I was 26 and 99 100ths of 27, right before turning 27 this happened. But ever since prison, I've never told Air Force officers, club manager story, which are really glorious, being the youngest club manager in the history of the Air Force. I had it made. But the prison stories are way better, man, because I never got raped. I never got killed. I had a lot of good friends. There's a lot of good people in prison, man. One guy was in prison for hitting someone in the head with a baseball bat and killing him. But he did it when he was 16, and now he was like 24, and he was about to get out because he did some time in a juvie one, and then he had to go to the grown-up prison after he turned 18. But he didn't have to do life. He was getting out after like 6 or 7 years, and he said it was a one-time thing, George. The guy was threatening to kill me, and I just swung the bat. So, you know what I mean? Maybe he's telling the truth. He was a good dude. He knew the Bible better than I did, which is impossible, by the way.
Really?
Yeah, that he was a trip, man. Yeah, I mean, anything I'd say, anything I'd quote, I mean, I could do it all. Any book, I'd say things, and he'd continue the sentence. I was like, "Where'd you come from?" And he's like, "I've been in prison for 10 years. I've read it every day for 10 years. I'm like, "Okay, that makes sense." I guess after 10 years of doing something, you get pretty good at it. He was a good dude. He became a very successful stockbroker.
Yeah, that's what I would like to be.
So,
well, George,
I wrote Gators, Miami, FSU. Who you picking to win the state championship of Florida this year?
State championship. Well, it's certainly not going to be Florida State. I know that.
I know.
Yeah, I don't have a call for you right now. Give me a couple months on that one.
All that matters is who wins the Miami Florida game. That'll be the state champ. We're going to beat Florida State. So who's going to win the Miami Florida game?
I know.
You're telling me Miami has a chance? You think they have a chance?
I think they have a chance. Yes, they've got a chance. They're at home. They've got a chance.
No, I'm right this time. Sometimes I'm wrong, but this time I'm right. Florida's going to win it. I'm just telling you for betting purposes.
Well, as you well know, I do fairly well in that arena.
Mm-hmm. And I do just as well as you do if you bet against my pick. If you take the opposite of what I bet every week, you win every week. At least for the last few years. This year might be different.
Well, George, I got to say, I've got an early wake-up call. And you said something about death warmed over. And that's about what I look like right now. And
not at all. Not at all.
I am going to collapse.
The kids are probably in bed. Tell Minnie it's a 6.7% IPA. Not really drinking vinegar. It's a microbrew. I go to the brewery and get it.
7, yeah.
The owner knows me, and apparently he loves me. He has done something with the pricing. If you go to the brewery, this shit's like $14 a 6-pack in the store. He's giving it to me for $7.50 a 6-pack. How's that for love? Hey,
Well,
it
George,
plays.
yeah, I
it
gotta
pays-
say, my return on investment at this show is not real impressive. And again, I have to get up awfully early, and
All right.
hope I'm not.
Mark,
gonna
it's
get
all
up.
my fault. The ROI is all my fault because I should have found you a damn sponsor by now. I'm really lagging on this one.
You're
It'll
lagging,
be worth it,
I'm
though.
lagging. We're all lagging.
When we sign Google, let's go for Google, man. I'll write you the letter. You got to rewrite it and sign it. I'll write you the letter. Dear Google.
I would just like Google to promote my work. Just promote the videos. They don't even have to pay me anything. Just get the videos out there.
I just want Google. I want Google to run an algorithm where anybody that watches your show more than once, if they ever buy anything on Google, you get that thing. It's attached to you. If they've ever been here and watched one video, wouldn't that be good? Yeah, we knocked down 500,000 a year on the side like that.
All right,
Google's,
George, man.
All right, they'll do it. Love you guys.
Call back anytime.
Good night.
Good to see you, George.
Go Gators.
All right, another night at the Voice of College Football. And actually on Thursday, who knows when I'm going to show up. As it stands right now, I got plans during the day. Don't know. I probably won't make the 4 p.m. regular slot. So who knows? Be looking out for the notification for our live show on Thursday night. It could be another 11 p.m. Eastern. Midnight. I don't know when we'll show up. And then we'll be back at it Friday at 4. Sorry that I cut some of your George entertainment down short, but I got to say, yeah, I'm struggling at this point. So we will call it a night, and we gave you a good hour 32. So appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Tell everyone that we're doing the late night thing once a week. So get the word out there, folks. And we will see you on Thursday. TBD.